A century ago, mysterious dungeons suddenly appeared, changing the world forever. Suddenly, dangerous dungeons erupted all over the earth, catching humanity by surprise. To challenge these new threats, adventurers now require licenses and specialized training. Serio Academy stands as a premier institution, attracting talented young adventurers from across the nation. Day and night, students rigorously test their skills within the academy's challenging grounds. They prove their worth by relentlessly challenging the perilous school dungeon. On the dreaded 9th floor, a massive multi-headed beast poses a formidable threat to all challengers. The monster roars in fury as adventurers strike, its immense power shaking the ground. Mononobe-san, a powerful student, unleashes her magic with a formidable, focused gaze. Other students cheer Mononobe-san's apparent victory, but she warns them the monster is still breathing. The multi-headed beast defies Mononobe-san's magic and begins to recover, terrifying the nearby students. The monstrous beast unleashes a deafening roar, forcing Mononobe-san to recoil in shock and pain. Suddenly, a student's shoe firmly steps onto one of the monster's numerous tails. The immense beast turns its snarling head to find a new challenger standing calmly atop its back. A new student, named Kenta, looks down with a fierce gaze and orders the monster out of his path. Kenta delivers a single, devastating punch, sending the colossal beast reeling from the impact. The monster is sent flying across the dungeon floor, scattering terrified students in its wake. Kenta adjusts his tie with a cool demeanor, standing casually over the now defeated multi-headed beast. Other students murmur about Kenta's arrogant display, calling him the sun god for his rude behavior. Kenta turns his sharp gaze towards someone unseen, recognizing them with an intense expression. Mononobe-san aggressively confronts Kenta, scolding him for his constant tardiness. Kenta brushes off Mononobe's accusation, casually declaring he made it in time. Mononobe-san seethes, her face reddening with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Kenta offers a flimsy excuse about helping an old lady, but Mononobe-san insists he take his duties more seriously. Mononobe-san's eyes widen in disbelief, completely stunned by Kenta's response. Kenta calmly details her previous apologies, exposing her gullibility and his pattern of similar excuses. Mononobe-san stares in utter disbelief, realizing she fell for his transparent lies again. Mononobe-san explodes in fury, outraged that Kenta so easily deceived her once more. Kenta sits defeated on the ground, lamenting how his own cleverness backfired on him. Other students observe the scene, noting Mononobe-san's seriousness and Kenta's habitual rudeness. A concerned student kneels to help a classmate, while Mononobe-san glares, clearly fed up with the chaos. Overwhelmed by the recent monster attack, a student wonders aloud about Kenta and Mononobe-san's identities. A fellow student, astonished, asks if they truly don't know who Mononobe-san and Kenta are. The impressive second-year student Mononobe Yukihime-san stands with an air of undeniable authority. Mononobe-san is the school director's granddaughter and holds the prestigious title of top honor student. The student looks on in genuine awe, marveling at Mononobe-san's truly amazing reputation. Another student hushes his friend, then inquires about the identity of the mysterious guy in black. They reveal the man in black is Sinokami Kuroto, rumored to be just as strong as Mononobe-san. Sinokami Kuroto's sharp gaze and serious expression confirm his formidable presence. However, Kuroto also carries a notorious reputation for being unruly, dangerous, and surrounded by adoring girls. Kuroto's piercing gaze silences the students who dared to gossip about him. The terrified students deny saying anything, shrinking from Kuroto's intimidating presence. Suddenly, another student is knocked to the ground, drawing a surprised cry. Mononobe-san confronts Kuroto, warning him against bullying other students. Mononobe-san scolds Kuroto, questioning why he always causes trouble despite his strength. As Kuroto walks away, Mononobe-san follows while students cheer her on to defeat him. The two rivals descend into the dungeon's depths, torches flickering on the ancient stone walls. Mononobe-san informs Kuroto about the unexplored and uncleared area beyond the 10th floor. Kuroto acknowledges her warning, knowing many upperclassmen have already given up. He speculates about the powerful monsters or traps that keep the truth of the lower levels secret. Mononobe-san observes Kuroto's focused determination, a subtle grin spreading across her face. She muses that Kuroto, despite his complaints, seems motivated, though not as much as she is. Mononobe-san declares her unparalleled motivation, prompting an annoyed huff from Kuroto. Mononobe-san explains the dungeon's significance, revealing it has been protected by her family for generations. She reveals her lifelong wish to conquer the dungeon completely, drawing a sarcastic remark from Kuroto. Mononobe-san challenges Kuroto, asking why he descends into the depths if his motivations are so different. Kuroto bluntly states his goal is the school's reward money for conquering the dungeon. Mononobe-san is surprised by his mercenary motive, but Kuroto insists money grants ultimate freedom. Mononobe-san looks dismayed, realizing the vast difference in their motivations. Reaching the 10th floor, they stand before the unexplored depths, ready to challenge the unknown. Mononobe-san cries out, unable to see through the thick miasma that suddenly engulfs the 10th floor. Suddenly, a blinding light erupts behind them, sealing off the entrance they just passed through. Mononobe-san points to a specific spot as Kuroto realizes they are now completely sealed inside. Before them stands a massive dragon statue, holding a mysterious sign with cryptic instructions. The sign reveals an unexpected condition: they cannot leave this room unless they are holding hands. Both Kuroto and Mononobe-san stare in disbelief, utterly bewildered by the strange requirement. Kuroto rages against the absurd condition, while Mononobe-san admits she has no idea what to do. Ignoring the riddle, Kuroto unleashes a powerful flare burst attack at the sealed exit. His fiery assault crashes against the barrier, but the magic deflects it without a scratch. Mononobe-san observes that brute force is useless, they must trigger the room's specific mechanism. Mononobe-san stares at the sign, the absurd condition glaring back at her. Kuroto falls silent, realizing the bizarre condition is no mere prank. Mononobe-san explains dungeons harvest human emotions by transforming to match their deepest desires. She questions if the dungeon's current form is specifically tailored to the students' collective wishes. Kuroto concedes that the dungeon transforming based on student desires is a distinct possibility. Mononobe-san suddenly blushes crimson, shouting that the situation is utterly indecent. She yells that improper relationships between students are strictly forbidden by school rules. Kuroto calmly points out that they would simply be holding hands, nothing more. Kuroto extends his hand to Mononobe-san, urging her to just get it over with. Mononobe-san nervously agrees, but a deeper look reveals her profound inner turmoil. Mononobe-san, overcome by nerves, accidentally unleashes a powerful, divine punishment attack at Kuroto. Kuroto demands an explanation, furious that Mononobe-san's special move almost took him out. Kuroto sighs in exasperation, his patience wearing thin with Mononobe-san's antics. Kuroto, arms crossed, asks Mononobe-san if she truly dislikes the idea of holding his hands so much. Mononobe-san admits her extreme nervousness, explaining she has never held a boy's hand before. She blushes intensely, reflecting her sheltered upbringing as a proper young lady. Kuroto takes a moment to process her words, a new understanding dawning on him. He realizes the dungeon matched Mononobe-san's desire for a rom-com, and he is the male lead. Mononobe-san surprises Kuroto by declaring that she does not dislike him at all. Kuroto is flustered by her bluntness, but Mononobe-san continues, praising him as someone worthy of respect. Mononobe-san's eyes well up as she prepares to explain exactly why she holds Kuroto in such high regard. Mononobe-san recalls a past moment where Kuroto genuinely helped a lost child, despite an earlier, perhaps fabricated, excuse. Kuroto demands to know how Mononobe-san discovered his hidden acts of kindness, but she playfully claims it was a mere coincidence. Mononobe-san looks down, her hands clasped nervously, as she prepares to voice a deeper, personal concern. She looks at her own hands, noticing their rough texture, a sign of her diligent, solitary training. Mononobe-san expresses her insecurity, believing Kuroto would find her hard-trained hands too rough to hold. Kuroto quickly reassures Mononobe-san that her hands are not an issue, but she is stunned he knows about her secret training. Kuroto casually reveals he discovered Mononobe-san's training because their secret spots accidentally overlapped. Kuroto kindly explains that her hands are not rough, but rather a testament to her dedication and hard work. Overwhelmed by Kuroto's unexpected sincerity, Mononobe-san falls silent, leaving Kuroto flustered and demanding a response. Mononobe-san points out that Kuroto was also blushing earlier, leaving him completely flustered. Kuroto tries to compose himself, his face still flushed from Mononobe-san's blunt observation. Both Kuroto and Mononobe-san are visibly flustered, their faces betraying their nervous excitement. The dungeon's voice insists they try the handshake one last time before it's time to go home. Both Mononobe-san and Kuroto hesitantly extend their hands, inching closer to the anticipated touch. Mononobe-san's entire face is a deep crimson as she bravely holds out her hand. Kuroto, equally flustered, steels himself and reaches out to meet Mononobe-san's hand. Instead of a full grasp, Mononobe-san's finger tentatively pokes Kuroto's palm. Kuroto is baffled by Mononobe-san's unexpected poke, utterly unprepared for her nervous reaction. Kuroto questions Mononobe-san's strange handshake, but she desperately asks for more time to mentally prepare. Kuroto scolds himself, urging his flustered mind to regain composure after Mononobe-san's unexpected touch. Kuroto's thoughts linger on Mononobe-san's hand, noting its unexpected softness despite her training. He questions his own overconfident demeanor, realizing he had underestimated the intimacy of holding hands. Mononobe-san panics internally, admitting to herself that she hasn't held hands with anyone in years. Mononobe-san points out Kuroto's bright red ears, exposing his continued embarrassment despite his attempts to hide it. Kuroto tries to stifle a laugh, failing to maintain his composure in the face of his own flustered reaction. Mononobe-san confronts Kuroto, asking if he's not also embarrassed, causing him to flinch away. She playfully accuses Kuroto of pretending to be calm, pointing out his own obvious signs of distress. Kuroto groans, his face completely flushed as Mononobe-san's observations push him further into embarrassment. Kuroto admits defeat, acknowledging he can't control his own intense reactions around Mononobe-san. Kuroto blurts out that Mononobe-san's hand was surprisingly soft, making him think about her differently. Mononobe-san's face erupts in a deep blush, overwhelmed by Kuroto's unexpected confession. She can barely comprehend his words, wondering when her actions caused such an unexpected reaction. Mononobe-san hides her face, utterly mortified by the sudden intimacy of their conversation. Kuroto observes her reaction, wondering if her embarrassment might actually hint at mutual feelings. Peeking through her fingers, Mononobe-san calls Kuroto a strange person for his candid thoughts. Despite her words, a flicker of uncertainty crosses Mononobe-san's eyes as she processes his confession. Both stand before the dungeon monster, their shared embarrassment now a strange bond between them. Kuroto steels his resolve, hoping this new understanding means he can finally hold her hand properly. Mononobe-san's own blush deepens as she considers holding hands with Sinokami-kun, a new feeling blooming. Mononobe-san's hand hovers over Kuroto's, still hesitant to commit to holding hands. Her fingers pull back, resisting the urge to connect with his soft palm. Mononobe-san finally pulls her hand completely away, leaving Kuroto's palm empty. Both Kuroto and Mononobe-san blush fiercely, locked in an awkward, silent moment. A sudden, sharp sound makes both of them flinch, eyes wide with surprise. They both recoil sharply as the dungeon monster suddenly stirs to life beside them. The crystal dungeon monster bursts free from its dormant state, letting out a deafening roar. A mysterious glowing tablet appears on the floor, prompting Kuroto to question the monster's sudden movement. The tablet reveals a cursed contract: they must hold hands to escape within 10 minutes. Mononobe-san looks worriedly at Kuroto, realizing their predicament, as the timer begins. Time is rapidly ticking away, but a heavy silence paralyzes both Kuroto and Mononobe. Above them, the massive crystal dragon grows impatient, its anger radiating through the chamber. Dark energy crackles in the beast's jaws as it prepares to wipe them out. The dragon unleashes a devastating blast of fire, tearing the ground apart. Scorched earth is all that remains where the destructive energy ripped through the floor. Suddenly, a classmate leaps into action, casting a powerful freezing spell. The dragon shrieks in agony as ice locks its massive limbs in place. She screams for them to make their move before the magic breaks. Kuroto steels his resolve, refusing to let their only chance of survival slip away. He reaches out, ready to force their hands together as the final seconds tick down. Kuroto channels his magic into his fist, preparing to unleash a devastating strike on the frozen beast. He drives his fiery punch straight into the monster, shattering the ground in a brilliant explosion. The sheer force of the blast obliterates the creature and tears the chamber apart. Kuroto stands tall amidst the rising smoke, calmly extinguishing the lingering flames on his hand. Mononobe watches in awe, realizing his raw power and master-level mana control far exceed any normal student. But her admiration quickly sours as she snaps her fingers, irritated by his reckless display. Rubble and debris rain down from the ceiling, threatening to bury them both. She immediately lectures him for using too much power and causing unnecessary collateral damage. Kuroto tries to soothe her by praising her support, prompting her to boast about her own necessity. With the path finally cleared, what terrifying new trials await them deeper inside the dungeon? Kuroto and Mononobe decide to move forward, glad they can skip the ridiculous dungeon challenge. But Mononobe loses her footing on the loose rubble, catching Kuroto completely off guard. She plunges forward with a scream, desperately reaching out to break her fall. Mononobe crashes directly into Kuroto, sending both students tumbling into an intimate embrace. A stunned silence fills the room as they realize they are accidentally holding hands. Panic sets in immediately, and they rip their hands apart in utter embarrassment. Mononobe furiously accuses him of touching her, while Kuroto desperately insists it was just an accident. Their eyes lock in a brief, tense moment of unspoken, mutual embarrassment. They turn away with flushed faces, refusing to admit the strange spark between them. As they bicker deeper into the dark abyss, they have no idea what terrifying trap lies waiting in the shadows. Back at school, the classroom buzzes with gossip as Mononobe approaches Kuroto's desk. She strictly orders him to be on time for their next dungeon run. Kuroto merely yawns, completely brushing off her demands and fueling her growing irritation. Their classmates watch the bickering duo, whispering about how the two rivals will never get along. Outside, the rest of the academy students gather to discuss their next major challenge. Rumors swirl about the deadly 10th floor, a treacherous zone that even elite warriors fled in terror. But a smug upperclassman named Mercuria boasts that his gathered data will easily conquer the floor. The crowd wonders if this confident student truly possesses the strength to back up his claim. When bystanders compare his power to Mononobe's level, she grinds her teeth in sheer frustration. Mononobe storms off, utterly sick of being everyone's default benchmark for dungeon power. Kouryaku plans to use this opportunity to finally surpass Mononobe and claim the top rank. Suddenly, a massive werewolf monster ambushes the crowd, sending the terrified students into a panic. Instantly, Mononobe draws her blade as Kuroto charges up a fiery fist to strike together. Their combined assault hits with explosive force, obliterating the beast in a single, devastating blow. Mononobe casually sheathes her sword, noting they only let one stray beast slip past them. Kouryaku sits frozen on the pavement, staring at the smoking ashes of the threat they just vaporized. The arrogant upperclassman breaks into a cold sweat as the reality of their overwhelming power sinks in. He quickly recovers his composure and mockingly asks Mononobe if she already finished her raid. He sneers, asking if she got scared and ran away from the dungeon's 10th floor. But both rivals shock the crowd by admitting that clearing the deep zone is currently impossible for them. Mononobe and Kuroto decide to call it a day and resolve to try again tomorrow. The onlookers watch in disbelief as the Academy's strongest duo actually admits defeat. Panic spreads through the ranks as the other students realize the danger ahead. Terrified by the missing data, Kouryaku deserts his classmates and runs away to save himself. The remaining students stand completely dumbfounded by their leader's sudden and cowardly retreat. Meanwhile, a quiet observer smiles as she realizes even the unbeatable prodigies are struggling. The next day, Kuroto and Mononobe return to face the dreaded 10th floor of the dungeon. After slaying 100 werewolves, they find a giant gatekeeper holding a mysterious stone tablet. The tablet reveals a bizarre rule: they cannot proceed until they call out each other's names. For two fierce rivals who can barely stand each other, this simple task might prove impossible. Kuroto steel-hardens his resolve and attempts to speak his rival's first name. Mononobe squeezes her eyes shut and forces out a stuttered version of Kuroto's name. But the massive gatekeeper buzzes in disapproval, rejecting their awkward and incomplete attempts. Kuroto shrugs off the failure, acting as if the embarrassing trial is no big deal. An outraged Mononobe calls him out, reminding him that he was just as embarrassed yesterday. Just 24 hours ago, both elite prodigies were reduced to blushing, stuttering messes. To her absolute disbelief, Kuroto sticks out his tongue to reveal a glowing magical crest. Mononobe stares in sheer horror as she realizes what her rival has actually done. He proudly explains that he spent all night developing a spell to physically force his tongue to speak. He smugly offers to cast the cheat code spell on her, but can she swallow her pride to bypass the trial? Mononobe flatly rejects Kuroto's cheat code, determined to clear the trial using her own pride. The two rivals steel themselves, though the sheer awkwardness of the trial weighs heavily on them. Suddenly, a massive wooden chest drops from above to grant them an item for their trial. Kuroto carefully inspects the trunk from a distance, searching for any hidden magical traps. But before he can finish his analysis, Mononobe boldly marches straight toward the suspicious chest. She throws the lid wide open, completely ignoring the danger of a potential trap. Kuroto furiously lectures her for being reckless, but she confidently relies on her sharp intuition. His harsh words easily deflate her confidence, leaving her pouting under his relentless scolding. When Mononobe looks inside the chest, her eyes widen in absolute disbelief at the treasure. Resting inside is a childish profile notebook, but how can this toy help them bypass the dungeon's barrier? Mononobe stares in disbelief at a sparkly children's profile notebook pulled straight from a mythical dungeon chest. Usually, these high-level chests contain rare herbs and powerful potions to aid their deadly quest. Kuroto clutches his head in frustration as the dungeon suddenly abandons its serious fantasy theme. Mononobe declares that this childish toy is actually a divine trial to force them to use first names. She proudly lays out her logic, leaving a skeptical Kuroto completely baffled by her bizarre deduction. With a bright smile, Mononobe happily invites her rival to fill out the colorful profile notebook together. She hovers her pen over the empty pages, ready to share her deepest childhood secrets. While Mononobe recalls fond school memories, Kuroto shudders at the thought of his own traumatic childhood rejection. But as the pen touches the paper, a sudden, heavy silence falls between the two elite prodigies. Before her days as an elite prodigy, a lonely young Mononobe watches her classmates play from afar. Mononobe's eyes well with tears as she recalls how desperately she wanted to share her profile with others. Kuroto panics at her tears, suddenly feeling terrible for ruining her childhood dream. To save the mood, Kuroto quickly lies and claims he always wanted to fill out a profile too. Mononobe giggles softly, her sadness instantly melting away at his awkward kindness. The two rivals sit down together, though Kuroto struggles to figure out what to write. Once their sheets are complete, they agree to reveal their answers on the count of 3. Kuroto shows off his simple sheet, featuring a crude doodle and a blunt refusal to share his future plans. Mononobe presents a cute self-portrait, revealing her ultimate post-dungeon goal is eating a giant sweet treat. Mononobe beams with pure joy, completely thrilled to finally experience this normal childhood rite of passage. Kuroto acts completely unbothered, but their bonding moment is about to face the dungeon's next brutal test. Mononobe notices Kuroto's grandma owns a cat and eagerly asks for its name. Kuroto reveals the cat's bizarre name, leaving Mononobe oddly impressed by his mature taste. Kuroto counters by pointing out her own old-fashioned love for traditional sweet rice cakes. He smugly declares that her favorite treat pairs perfectly with premium green tea. Mononobe playfully teases Kuroto, telling him he sounds exactly like an elderly grandmother. Kuroto silently marvels at how much joy she gets from a simple children's game. Mononobe admits the exchange isn't so bad, even if Kuroto barely shared any real information. Suddenly, a loud chime echoes through the room, instantly shattering their peaceful moment. To their utter shock, a hidden door swings open right beside a stone statue. Kuroto suddenly freezes in terror as he realizes his casual words might have triggered a deadly trap. Mononobe stares in silence as she tries to process the bizarre dungeon logic. Realizing a cheap pun unlocked the door, Kuroto casually waves goodbye and prepares to head home. Enraged by his lazy attitude, Mononobe immediately grabs him and refuses to let him leave. She demands he stay until he addresses her properly, but Kuroto just wants to sleep. Mononobe takes a deep breath and struggles to overcome her intense embarrassment. With a bright red face, she finally musters the courage to call Kuroto by his name. The unexpected honorific catches Kuroto completely off guard, freezing him dead in his tracks. An awkward, heart-pounding silence stretches between the two rivals as their eyes lock. Mononobe flashes a triumphant grin, immensely proud of herself for completing the embarrassing task. Kuroto mutters a dismissive reply, desperately trying to hide how deeply her cute gesture rattled him. With the trial cleared, Kuroto decides to call it a day and head home. Mononobe proudly boasts that winning without magic proves her absolute superiority over her rival. Kuroto glares back in utter disbelief, completely annoyed by her ridiculous claims. He snaps back, claiming he can easily say her name without any magical help. Mononobe eagerly dares him to try, instantly sparking a loud and childish shouting match. Their loud, petty bickering echoes across the schoolyard as sunset quickly approaches. Mononobe struggles to say his name while Kuroto warns her they are running out of time. Suddenly, a loud shout erupts from the nearby bushes, stopping them dead in their tracks. The chaotic encounter abruptly cuts away to tease what lies ahead in the next chapter. Who is this mysterious new pair, and how will they disrupt Kuroto and Mononobe's dungeon adventures? A mysterious figure steps into the frame, addressing an unseen audience with casual confidence. The bubbly streamer introduces her dungeon channel, promising viewers that total chaos is coming soon. The pair arrives at the healing spring on the 5th floor of the dungeon. They settle in to watch a popular streamer broadcasting from the dungeon depths. Kirara Kongoan flashes a bright grin to her viewers while live streaming her dungeon run. Kuroto and his companion watch the digital broadcast with wide, confused eyes. Kuroto admits he watches strong players to gain valuable references for his own training. He notices the streamer is wearing their specific school uniform on camera. Kuroto is genuinely stunned that she does not recognize the famous dungeon streamer. The stream highlights Kirara's immense popularity and her high-quality gear. Viewers spam the chat with comments about the class rep scolding Kirara for streaming. Kuroto awkwardly tries to explain his lack of interest in the digital celebrity's antics. Kuroto pauses in confusion as his companion suddenly recalls a pressing matter. Kirara beams at her audience, hyping up her special live stream with a surprise guest. She proudly introduces Kuroto and his partner as the strongest students at the academy. Kuroto and the girls stare at the broadcast, completely baffled by the sudden attention. The group continues their trek through the dungeon hallways, unaware of the digital eyes. Kuroto expresses his genuine surprise that she actually agreed to this public display. She dismisses his concern with a confident grin, claiming she owes it to her classmate. Kuroto presses her on the goal, warning her that they are forgetting something very important. She looks back at him with a blank expression, completely oblivious to his serious warning. Kuroto sighs, realizing the next dungeon trial will likely force them into more intimacy. The embarrassing realization hits them both like a physical blow. Kuroto panics as he realizes their fumbling dungeon run is now public. Kuroto demands an explanation for her overly intimate tone. She suddenly remembers her plan to use this name as a milestone. She explains that using his name is a symbol of her personal growth. Kuroto warns her that such public intimacy will only invite unwanted rumors. She smiles, genuinely happy to have found a friend in Kuroto. Kuroto worries she is being too casual, but she remains blissfully unaware. Kuroto attempts to downplay his concern while hiding his flustered face. She ignores his protest and insists he call her by her given name. Kirara teases Kuroto, playfully reminding him how long it has been since he last used her name. A viewer captures the embarrassing moment on their phone, broadcasting their awkward dynamic to the world. The rival streamer scowls, furious that the duo is stealing her spotlight at the academy. She watches their struggle with glee, plotting to expose their incompetence to her entire audience. The atmosphere shifts as the group reaches the dungeon's 10th floor, entering a deeper, dangerous chamber. A massive, imposing metal golem suddenly blocks their path, brandishing a cryptic warning on a sign. Kouryaku immediately broadcasts the threat, warning her viewers that the metal golem is an incredibly tough enemy. She realizes that even a powerhouse like Mononobe might struggle against such a mechanical monstrosity. The golem reveals a hidden mechanic, claiming that exploiting the right trick will allow them to pass. Kuroto and Kouryaku stare at the sign in disbelief, wondering just what kind of bizarre test awaits. Kouryaku stares in absolute disbelief as the situation escalates further than she ever expected. Kuroto remains stoic, analyzing the bizarre turn of events while Kouryaku spirals into panic. The massive mechanical golem lets out a deafening roar, signaling its immediate and lethal intent. Kouryaku snaps at Kuroto to be quiet, her frustration mounting as the pressure reaches boiling point. Without hesitation, a defensive barrier erupts to intercept the golem's crushing, heavy metallic blow. Kouryaku's eyes widen in sheer amazement, completely caught off guard by the sudden display of power. She begrudgingly praises Kuroto's earth magic, though she hates to admit he is actually useful. Kouryaku pivots instantly to her audience, calling for a timeout to process the chaotic encounter. They turn their attention back to the golem, confused by the strange taunts it gestures. The cryptic sign reveals an absurd dungeon mechanic, leaving the duo baffled by its nonsensical requirement. Kouryaku and Kuroto admit they are just as confused by the dungeon's bizarre, cryptic sign. The atmosphere grows heavy as the duo realizes the true meaning of the challenge. Spectators watch in disbelief that such a plain, dull guy actually cleared the mission. Kouryaku and Kuroto trade barbs, their bickering masking the underlying tension of the dungeon. Kuroto observes the situation with a cold, analytical stare, searching for the hidden truth. Kuroto reflects on his companion, noting that while he lacks flash, he gets results. The reality of their situation finally sinks in, leaving the viewers completely stunned. Kouryaku realizes the truth, blushing as she suspects a budding romance between the two. The implications hit the audience, turning their intense dungeon crawl into a romantic spectacle. Kouryaku frantically dismisses the rumors, but the dungeon's strange effect keeps them guessing. Kouryaku dreams of fame and the downfall of her rival, wallowing in pathetic, dramatic defeat. She snaps back to reality, determined to force Kuroto into her spotlight at any cost. Kuroto remains focused on the dungeon, barely acknowledging the frantic, camera-wielding Kouryaku beside him. Kuroto demands they finish the task, while Kouryaku struggles to keep up with his pace. Kouryaku begs for a break as the dungeon's bizarre mechanics threaten to expose their secrets. Her stream goes live again, broadcasting the chaos to an audience desperate for juicy gossip. Kouryaku panics, terrified that her audience will uncover a secret romance she never intended. The pair stands in total silence, the tension between them reaching a breaking point. Kuroto prepares to reveal his true feelings, but Kouryaku desperately tries to block him. Kuroto denies the rumors, but his cold, stoic expression only makes the truth more suspicious. The massive golem erupts in a blinding flash, signaling the activation of a hidden mechanism. A mysterious orb launches into the air, drawing the confused party's eyes upward. Kouryaku stares in complete disbelief as the strange projectile drifts toward them. The object strikes Kouryaku squarely on the head, leaving her dazed and bewildered. Kuroto dismisses the incident as indecent, focused entirely on the opening for an attack. Kouryaku flushes with frustration, realizing she worked herself into a frenzy for nothing. The golem remains standing, its frame cracked but its defenses holding strong. They spot the glowing core, realizing the monster has not been fully defeated yet. Kuroto demands to know why the dungeon conditions remain unfulfilled despite their best efforts. Kuroto suddenly has a realization, but the weight of the coming truth leaves him speechless. Kouryaku stares at the group in confusion, demanding to know what is happening right now. Kuroto points to the screen, coldly informing Kouryaku that she is included in the count. Kouryaku explodes in a fit of rage, her face flushing red from the sudden accusation. She snaps back, insisting she knows nothing and demanding they stop dragging her into this. Kuroto dismisses her outburst, claiming it is not a big deal and questioning her decency. He tells the others not to force Kouryaku, keeping his eyes locked on the mission. Kuroto points out their previous confession, questioning why she feels so much pressure now. He warns that the dungeon shield is failing and they must reset their positions immediately. Kouryaku steps forward, firmly telling Kuroto not to make decisions on her behalf anymore. The weight of his words hits home as Kouryaku struggles to process her own feelings. Tears stream down her face as she recalls her first love protecting her from bullies. A sudden, blinding strike erupts, shattering the golem into countless jagged fragments. The digital feed scrolls with chaotic comments, stunned by the sheer power of the move. The party stands amidst the debris, finally catching their breath after the intense battle. They lean on each other for support, exhausted by the dungeon's relentless, draining trials. Kuroto questions how a single strike leveled the massive golem, wondering about their gear. The group laments their lack of screen time, realizing they were overshadowed this round. Suddenly, a sharp voice cuts through the air, demanding attention from the confused group. Mikuria Saikairo, head of the disciplinary committee, looms over them, furious about their tardiness. Saikairo points an accusatory finger, declaring an immediate end to their dangerous dungeon streaming. Saikairo demands to know why Kirara is involved, but she refuses to accept his accusation. Kirara desperately wants to leave the situation, begging to avoid being dragged into this mess. Saikairo mocks Kirara, claiming she was far more serious when she was just a child. The group watches in confusion as their private secrets are suddenly laid bare in public. Kuroto muses on the mention of kindergarten, leaving everyone wondering what exactly is happening next. The school cafeteria hums with activity as students go about their mundane, daily routines. Kuroto finds himself cornered by a girl, who asks him what is bothering him. She mentions a friend who was banned from the dungeon, her voice trembling slightly. A girl approaches with a meal, her cheerful melody catching everyone off guard. She greets Kuroto with a smile, casually suggesting they eat together right now. Kuroto tries to shoo her away, insisting there are plenty of other empty seats. She ignores his protest, claiming the food will get cold if she keeps searching. Kuroto sighs in defeat, telling her to sit wherever she wants to stop talking. The surrounding students begin to buzz with gossip, watching the pair with intense curiosity. Whispers fill the room as they wonder if something happened between the two in the dungeon. Kuroto sighs, exhausted by the relentless pressure of his social life in the academy. He confronts the girl, demanding she leave him alone before more rumors start spreading. She ignores his warning, calmly chewing her food while questioning the bizarre rumors. Kuroto tries to downplay their relationship, claiming people think they are far too close. He admits, however, that they are close enough to use each other's first names. She teases him about that singular moment he actually called her by her name. Kuroto snaps back with a desperate plea for her to just shut up already. She fixes her hair, unbothered by his outburst as she continues her casual meal. Kuroto hides his face in his hands, trying to tune out her humming and gossip. He confesses that since that day, he cannot even look Mononobe in the eye. Kuroto shakes his head violently, desperate to purge the awkward thoughts from his mind. He risks a sidelong glance, only to find the tension thick enough to cut. Kuroto forces himself to focus on lunch, chanting that dungeon conquest is his only priority. He continues to shovel food into his mouth, ignoring the mounting pressure of the cafeteria. She mocks his formality, noting that he still insists on using her last name. The girl stares back with a look that pierces through his pathetic, defensive walls. She presses him to use her first name again, pushing him into a corner. Kuroto finally snaps and shouts her first name, unable to handle the social strain. She blushes furiously, suddenly realizing how deeply his words have actually affected her heart. Kuroto glares as he struggles to suppress his thoughts while the cafeteria buzzes with gossip. Kuroto is baffled by the strange sign found deep within the dungeon. They stand before the mysterious altar on the 10th floor of the dungeon. The sign warns that lying to the dragon will trigger a terrible calamity. Kuroto stares at the dragon statue, wondering what kind of calamity awaits them. Mononobe notes the unusually serious tone of the warning carved into the stone. Kuroto worries aloud if such a penalty could actually mean being banned forever. Mononobe agrees that getting banned would ruin their hard-earned path as adventurers. Dungeons are lucrative, but they hold the power to banish anyone at will. This harsh system exists to protect the dungeon from any unwanted intruders. The dungeon's entry prohibition system strikes down those who violate its sacred laws. The dungeon walls warn that any rule-breaking or destruction results in an immediate, permanent ban. Kuroto realizes that being banned effectively ends his career as an elite student adventurer. Desperate to avoid such a fate, Kuroto decides he has no choice but to proceed. Kuroto looks at the ominous altar and admits he has a very bad feeling. Mononobe ignores his hesitation and marches forward with a bright, confident smile. Suddenly, the stone dragon snaps its jaws shut, clamping down hard on Mononobe's hand. Kuroto screams in frustration, berating her for acting without thinking before the trap triggered. Mononobe remains unfazed, insisting that she will be fine as long as she tells no lies. She questions why a classic Italian icon like the Mouth of Truth appears in this dungeon. Kuroto notes the dungeon consumes human knowledge and emotion, leaving the two trapped in uncertainty. The dungeon's mysterious profile book reveals exactly why it knows the adventurer's deepest secrets. Mononobe declares they must face the challenge head-on, urging Kuroto to step back. Mononobe blushes deeply as she prepares to reveal her hidden truth to the statue. She admits her only hobby is buying snacks and eating them on the way home. Silence hangs in the air as the stone dragon reacts to her surprisingly mundane confession. Kuroto stares in disbelief, wondering if she really just gave that as her secret. Mononobe laughs off his judgment, claiming her lack of self-control is simply a fact. She dreams of donuts, scones, and apple pies while detailing her favorite sugary temptations. Kuroto sighs, noting that calling such a trivial habit a secret is a massive stretch. The stone dragon rings out with a chime, signaling that her honesty passed the test. Mononobe beams with triumph, celebrating her successful confession as Kuroto watches in total confusion. She crosses her arms, convinced that bearing her soul has given her the upper hand. Mononobe turns to Kuroto, insisting it is finally time for him to face his turn. Kuroto smirks, realizing that if such mundane secrets pass, this trial will be easy. He approaches the stone dragon and confesses he prefers cats over dogs. Suddenly, a sharp electrical discharge snaps against his hand, leaving him reeling in pain. The stone dragon's jaws clamp down mercilessly on his hand, drawing a pained shout. Kuroto clutches his throbbing hand, demanding to know what is wrong with this trap. Mononobe observes the failure, noting that his trivial secret clearly did not satisfy the dungeon. She sighs, questioning the health of his cat, Sakatoba, as the tension continues to rise. Kuroto's cat, Sakatoba, spends her time snacking on dried salmon jerky in total comfort. Kuroto explains he spent the entire night keeping the needy cat company while she meowed. Mononobe watches the failed attempt and suggests Kuroto try verifying his secret once again. Kuroto hesitates, wondering if he should reveal his deepest, most embarrassing secret to her. He admits that he once tried streaming from a dungeon but failed to gain traction. Kuroto reveals he deleted his account because one creepy viewer kept sending massive donations. Mononobe immediately locks onto his words, sensing he is about to reveal something juicy. The dungeon statue suddenly bites down, rejecting his confession and leaving him in agony. Kuroto screams at the statue, demanding to know why it refuses his honest truth. Mononobe asks if he has ever told anyone else, forcing him to face his shame. Kuroto recalls the moment he finally vented his frustrations to his cat, Sakatoba. He admits that divulging his most guarded secret might be the key to passing. Kuroto theorizes that the dungeon is actively analyzing their deepest, most private memories. Mononobe realizes the dungeon even knows about his private conversations with his pet. She leans in, sensing a truly juicy secret is about to be laid bare. Kuroto deflects her prying, claiming the truth is far too dangerous to share. Mononobe refuses to let it go, begging him to just reveal the magic. A sudden, haunting voice echoes in Kuroto's mind, calling out to him. He freezes, unable to ignore the chilling summons from the depths of the dungeon. Mononobe notices his sudden shift in demeanor and asks if something is wrong. Kuroto deflects her prying questions, insisting that what he heard was absolutely nothing. Mononobe stares at him, her eyes searching for any sign of a hidden truth. He clenches his hand tight, struggling to keep his composure under her intense gaze. Mononobe steps back, telling Kuroto she will wait for him to finish his business. Kuroto tries to brush it off, wondering if she really is okay not hearing it. Mononobe smiles warmly, assuring him that she is perfectly fine with his silence. She playfully suggests he buy her a meat bun to make up for the secret. Kuroto watches her walk away, completely stunned by her surprisingly casual demand. He blushes, realizing that the girl he is with is far more unpredictable than expected. But deep in the shadows, a single eye watches them, waiting for the perfect moment. Kuroto reaches out, his hand trembling as he prepares to confront the stone guardian. He takes a deep, steadying breath to calm the nerves rattling his very soul. Standing before the massive slab, Kuroto begins to confess his darkest, most painful regret. He admits he committed an unforgivable sin against his younger sister, one beyond repair. Mononobe watches from a distance as the dungeon floor begins to churn and crack. The stone face of the guardian contorts into a terrifying, wrathful expression of judgment. It accuses him of lying, claiming he has deceived the dungeon 3 times over. The guardian bellows a command, unleashing a calamity that threatens to consume them both. Kuroto stares in disbelief, his mind reeling as the dungeon rejects his honest confession. He screams that he told the truth, but as the walls collapse, the real secret remains buried. The ground shudders beneath their feet as the dungeon awakens with a deafening roar. Kuroto clutches his head, overwhelmed by the sudden, violent shift in the environment. Mononobe lunges forward, shouting a desperate warning as the ceiling begins to cave in. She tackles Kuroto, sliding across the debris to pull him out of harm's way. They tumble to the ground, caught in a tangle of limbs and breathless confusion. Mononobe's eyes widen as she realizes their compromising, intimate position on the floor. Kuroto quickly backs away, stammering an apology while trying to regain his composure. Mononobe watches him with a lingering, anxious glance, still reeling from the sudden chaos. Above them, the dungeon walls continue to collapse, signaling the start of their ordeal. Kuroto stares at the rising destruction, realizing his attempt to appease the dungeon failed. Kuroto scowls in frustration, his attempt to appease the dungeon ending in total failure. He wonders aloud why his honest secret failed to satisfy the dungeon's mysterious criteria. Kuroto laments that he has absolutely no other secrets left to offer the guardian. Mononobe suggests they must verify the dungeon's intentions while debris rains down around them. They stand side by side, bracing themselves against the collapsing walls of the chamber. Kuroto leaps into the fray, his patience finally snapping under the pressure of survival. He lunges at the guardian, shouting his fury as he prepares to strike back. The dungeon guardian recoils, shocked by Kuroto's sudden, aggressive outburst in the heat of battle. Mononobe watches Kuroto's wild assault with a calm, amused smirk from the sidelines. She raises her blade, fully prepared to join the fray and finish this fight. Mononobe unleashes her secret technique, the White Storm, tearing through the air with lethal precision. The dungeon creatures recoil in sheer terror as her blade slices through their defensive formation. Kuroto yells at the fleeing birds, desperate to prevent them from reaching the upper levels. He declares they are splitting up, but Mononobe insists on joining him in the pursuit. Kuroto sighs in resignation, admitting his previous approach was a complete and utter mistake. Mononobe offers a warm, knowing smile, suggesting that teamwork will yield better results than solitude. Kuroto grudgingly allows her to follow, telling her to do whatever she wants. They arrive at the 9th floor to find a crowd of explorers blocking their path. The group refuses to yield, murmuring in confusion as the pair tries to push through. Suddenly, a girl jumps into frame, excitedly announcing her intent to film a makeup tutorial. Kuroto scolds Kirara, demanding she stop her constant, distracting behavior in such a dangerous place. Kirara glares at him, clearly annoyed by his sudden accusation and his interference in her plans. Kirara fires back, insisting she does nothing to hinder his progress despite his daily complaints. Kuroto lists their chaotic recent history, from eating contests to ridiculous cross-dressing challenges, in utter disbelief. He wonders aloud if the dungeon is actively sabotaging his attempts to reach the 10th floor. Mononobe approaches, interrupting his spiral of frustration with a pressing, pointed question for him. She suggests a hypothetical scenario where a dungeon mechanism requires a two-person team to bypass. With a bright, hopeful grin, she asks if he would finally agree to work with her. Kuroto pauses, deeply contemplating her proposal while she waits in nervous, flushed anticipation. He finally admits, with a snap of clarity, that Mononobe is more than enough help. Kirara stands her ground, defiantly blocking the path and refusing to let anyone pass through. She snaps back at Kuroto, declaring she will never allow Makoto to enter the demon realm. Kuroto adjusts his glasses, frustrated that their investigation is barely moving forward at this pace. Kirara confirms she is helping only because a teacher specifically requested her participation in this. Kuroto notes that students are being mysteriously banned from the dungeon for unknown reasons. Kirara acknowledges the building recently underwent a total regeneration, resetting the internal environment. The dungeon evolves every few years, changing its internal structure to harvest human emotions more efficiently. Kuroto insists they must identify the specific mechanism behind these bans before it is too late. Kirara mocks him, asking why the disciplinary chairman is wasting his time on such a hassle. Kuroto remains stoic and unmoved, quietly accepting the burden of the task ahead of him. Kuroto takes his duties seriously, even when he is stuck doing the most mundane tasks. Mononobe flashes a sly, knowing grin that suggests she has a trick up her sleeve. She playfully shoves Kuroto, mocking his inability to let go of his rigid, serious nature. Kuroto sighs in frustration, desperate to push forward with the dungeon investigation despite the delays. Kirara immediately shuts him down, crossing her arms to signal that his progress ends here. The surrounding students watch the bickering duo, confused as to why they are fighting again. Kuroto ignores the chatter and orders everyone to retreat, sensing something is deeply wrong here. A chilling sound echoes from the depths, stopping them in their tracks with pure dread. A massive beast erupts from the void, shattering the peace of the dungeon floor instantly. Panic sweeps across the group as they realize the true nightmare has only just begun. Kuroto stands in silence, his expression hardening as he confronts a painful memory from his past. Kirara watches him with genuine concern, sensing the weight of the dark secret he carries. She struggles to find the right words, her hands clutching at her chest in quiet apprehension. Kuroto turns away, his voice heavy with self-loathing as he reveals the truth of his arrogance. He admits that he once possessed enough magical talent to make his own family headlines. Kirara listens in disbelief, struggling to process that his past was once public knowledge. Kuroto leans against the wall, confessing that his reckless ambition led to his sister's injury. He recalls a time when he was young, boastful, and utterly blinded by his own magical potential. His younger sister cheered for him, unaware that his drive would eventually lead to a disaster. Kuroto explains his past desire to attend the research institute, oblivious to the tragedy looming ahead. Kuroto recalls his sister's innocent dream of becoming a sparkling idol, blissfully unaware of the future. His arrogance turned fatal when his unchecked magic spiraled, causing a catastrophic accident that shattered everything. She survived the inferno, but the permanent burn scars serve as a constant reminder of his failure. Kuroto laments how his reckless ambition cruelly stole his sister's future and destroyed her precious dream. Kirara questions if his current obsession with clearing the dungeon is merely a way to pay bills. Kuroto self-deprecatingly claims he is a terrible person, fully expecting her to turn away in disgust. Instead, Kurara reaches out and firmly takes his hand, refusing to let him wallow in shame. She rejects his harsh self-assessment, pulling him back to face the reality of their shared journey. Kurara praises his courage, noting that facing his past without running away earns her deep respect. Kuroto stares back at her, stunned by her kindness as the weight of his guilt finally shifts. Kuroto deflects the heavy emotional moment with a self-deprecating laugh, calling himself a softie. Kurara presses on, asking what exactly he meant by his claim that he cannot atone. She wonders if the dungeon's refusal to accept his confession implies he still has hope. Kuroto stares at her, completely stunned by her refusal to accept his grim worldview. Kurara hides a knowing grin, challenging his logic with a cryptic question about his intent. Kuroto is visibly flustered, protesting that his past crimes offer no room for redemption. Kurara cuts him off, insisting that the dungeon rejected his guilt for a specific reason. She demands that he stop dwelling on the unchangeable past and start looking toward tomorrow. Kurara pulls him forward, and for the first time, Kuroto considers a future beyond regret. A genuine sense of relief washes over Kuroto as he realizes he is no longer alone. Kurara leads Kuroto forward, telling him that he is truly something else. She turns back with a soft smile, ready to tackle the 9th floor together. Kuroto readies himself for the challenge ahead, his determination finally taking root. Suddenly, a swarm of winged creatures descends upon them from the ceiling. While Kurara films the chaos, their companion shouts at her to stop slacking. The group scrambles as the dungeon monsters swarm, forcing them to retreat upward. Kuroto unleashes his fiery technique, incinerating the beasts in a powerful display. Kurara celebrates their perfect synchronization, clearly impressed by their combined combat prowess. Kuroto brushes off the praise, claiming he was simply matching her own pace. The pressure mounts as their ally demands they keep moving, despite the overwhelming odds. Kuroto and his team finally clear the floor, breathing a collective sigh of relief. Kuroto clears his throat, attempting to regain his composure after the intense battle. He thanks Yukiheim for her support, but the sudden intimacy sends a jolt through her. Yukiheim scolds him for the surprise remark, hiding her embarrassment behind defensive banter. Kuroto tries to deflect by teasing her about her own penchant for surprise attacks. Yukiheim falls silent, her face flushed as the weight of the moment settles in. Kuroto watches her, heart pounding as he struggles to process his growing feelings. His mind races, unable to focus as the crushing weight of his nervousness takes hold. Fearful of saying something foolish in the silence, Kuroto finally breaks and speaks up. He blurts out a confession of his feelings, leaving their future hanging in balance. The confession hangs in the air, leaving the young couple stunned by their own boldness. The onlookers erupt into applause, completely enchanted by the sudden display of youthful romance. Kuroto tries to brush off the attention, while his companion watches with a genuine smile. Suddenly, the floor beneath them gives way, cutting their romantic moment short with a jolt. The couple vanishes into a dark void, leaving the crowd in a state of confusion. The dungeon's voice echoes through the halls, declaring the duo banned for prohibited conduct. Kuroto and his partner fall through the darkness, screaming as their surroundings dissolve away. The students gather around the empty hole, whispering about the sudden and mysterious disappearance. Kuroto struggles to regain his composure, his mind reeling from the dungeon's harsh, immediate punishment. With their path forward blocked and their status revoked, their dungeon journey hits a wall. The group puzzles over the sudden disappearance, finding no official word on prohibited dungeon activities. Kuroto feels a sinking dread as he realizes the horrifying truth behind the dungeon's rules. Yukiheim gasps in disbelief as they realize public displays of affection are strictly forbidden here. Yukiheim and her companion soak in the hot spring, discussing the recent, mysterious dungeon incident. Yukiheim splashes the water in frustration, clearly agitated by the academy's lack of action. She vents to her friend about her meeting with the chairman, who happens to be her grandfather. The dungeon grows more volatile every day, yet the administration refuses to acknowledge the rising danger. They desperately need to defeat a boss to vent the dungeon's building, hazardous pressure. The dungeon feeds on human desire, growing stronger while the academy remains dangerously idle. Only constant boss subjugations can drain the energy before it spills over into the world. Yukiheim insists they had options like requesting outside government help to manage the crisis. But her grandfather stubbornly refuses to intervene, leaving the students to face the threat alone. Yukiheim fumes as she recalls his dismissive words, realizing their safety is not his priority. Yukiheim fumes in the bath, unable to forgive the academy for ignoring the victims. Mononobe pauses, her expression shifting as she considers the implications of the dungeon's rules. Mononobe admits the chairman has his reasons for keeping outsiders away from the dungeon. She acknowledges the dungeon provides luxuries like this bath as a strange, hidden blessing. Yukiheim presses Mononobe, asking if her own family profits from the dungeon's vast wealth. The simple truth remains, dungeons are machines that generate immense, unstoppable wealth. Mononobe recalls how her grandfather built their family fortune by exploring these dangerous depths. Yukihime argues that with so many students enrolled specifically for the dungeon, excuses are invalid. A sudden, painful thought of Kuroto flashes through Yukihime's mind, silencing her frustration. Elsewhere, Kuroto remains determined to earn the necessary treatment money through dungeon rewards. Mononobe explains that government interference would strip away the dungeon's valuable hidden treasures. Yukihime struggles to process the cold, greedy logic governing the academy's hidden domain. She insists that profit cannot justify leaving dangerous dungeon damage completely unattended. Yukihime worries aloud that she is carrying the weight of this crisis entirely alone. The students recall the bizarre, restrictive system that punishes genuine affection with an immediate ban. They confirm the rumor that falling in love inside the dungeon triggers this harsh penalty. Mononobe notes the irony of traps designed to force awareness while keeping students vulnerable. She asks if Yukihime is prepared for the inevitable consequences of falling for someone. Yukihime blushes, finding herself unable to deny the weight of her own secret feelings. Mononobe dismisses her own risks but fears the ban will ruin the futures of others. Yukihime pushes Mononobe for answers, refusing to let her avoid the awkward topic. A soft tap breaks the silence as Mononobe turns her gaze away from Yukihime. Mononobe leans in close to whisper a pointed question about Yukihime's true feelings. Yukihime erupts in a frantic, blushing mess, caught completely off guard by the suggestion. She frantically denies any feelings for Kuroto, while Mononobe maintains a cool, knowing smirk. Mononobe calls out her bluff, claiming her own intuition is perfectly spot on. Yukihime hangs her head, her face burning as the reality of her attraction settles. She grips her own arm, struggling to admit that Kuroto is worthy of her affection. Yukihime confesses her confusion, unsure if her heart leans toward love or dislike. Mononobe nonchalantly deflects, waving off the concerns while Yukihime remains trapped in her doubt. Mononobe warns that if Kuroto discovers the hidden rules, his serious nature will stop everything. She presses Yukihime to confirm if she truly understands the nature of her own feelings. Yukihime retreats into her own mind, struggling to define the uncertainty blooming in her heart. A sudden, violent tremor shakes the very foundation of the academy, silencing their conversation instantly. The earth splits open as the dungeon begins to tear the school grounds apart. Students scramble for safety as the ground crumbles and the structures begin to collapse. Yukihime gasps, realizing the chaotic destruction is another direct manifestation of the dungeon's power. Yukihime watches in horror as the catastrophe spills over to threaten the lives of ordinary civilians. Her eyes widen in sudden, sharp realization of the true scale of the encroaching disaster. Kuroto stands firm in the chaos, declaring that his only path forward is conquering the dungeon. Yukihime scowls, her face flushing as she struggles to process her own complicated feelings. She insists on heading into the dungeon immediately, desperate to escape the awkward conversation. On the 10th floor, a lethal trap triggers, sending a relentless hail of arrows downward. Kuroto and Yukihime stand caught in the barrage, forced to face the dungeon's latest absurdity. A sign mocks them with a ridiculous challenge, forcing them to share a single umbrella. The dungeon relentlessly manipulates their situation, setting up romantic tropes to suit its own desires. The danger escalates as the arrows reveal themselves to be coated in a deadly toxin. Yukihime draws her bow to retaliate, but Kuroto warns her that attacking will trigger poison. Kuroto deftly dodges an incoming projectile, explaining that the umbrella is their only true defense. They consider the challenge ahead, wondering if they can survive the dungeon's bizarre, forced romance. Kuroto laughs off the absurdity, insisting that sharing an umbrella is a simple task. Yukihime finds herself blushing, wondering if she can truly handle a mission like this. A mysterious voice whispers from the shadows, questioning her true feelings for him. Yukihime freezes, her internal composure shattering as she questions the ease of it all. Dungeon magic forces a playback in her mind, replaying the moment she drew closer. Kuroto pulls her away from a projectile, his proximity sending her into a total panic. The pair quickly realizes they are already in deep trouble as the dungeon tightens its grip. Yukihime desperately wonders if they can actually survive this bizarre and forced romantic mission. Kuroto tries to regain his composure, but his next words might just seal their fate forever. The dungeon presents a new, ridiculous condition: they must share an umbrella to find the key. Kuroto states his goal is to clear the dungeon for his younger sister's sake. Yukihime narrows her eyes, wondering what Kuroto's true intentions are in this place. Rain falls steadily as they stand apart, the dungeon watching their every move. Yukihime admits her own desire to clear the dungeon for the sake of everyone involved. Kuroto smiles, clearly relieved to hear her honest commitment to their shared mission. Yukihime questions if the penalty for falling for each other applies to them. Kuroto laughs, confident that they are far too incompatible to ever trigger a romantic atmosphere. They agree to proceed quickly, hoping to avoid any further complications from the dungeon's magic. Yukihime declares she will not be banned, but her resolve is already beginning to crack. Kuroto snaps the umbrella open, ready to get this awkward dungeon trial over with. Yukihime points out the height difference, noting the handle will hit her in the head. Yukihime insists on taking the lead, but Kuroto refuses to let her hold it. The pair stands inches apart, trapped in an uncomfortable silence beneath the small canopy. Kuroto realizes they are standing far too close for his own professional comfort. Yukihime panics at their proximity, her face burning as they crowd under the umbrella. Suddenly, the dungeon's rain slows, leaving them stranded in an even more suspicious silence. Kuroto stares in disbelief as the magical rain begins to taper off completely. They watch as the falling rain fades, leaving them alone in an unnatural, dry void. Kuroto questions why the dungeon would stop the rain only while they share an umbrella. Kuroto and Yukihime walk together under the umbrella, searching for the elusive dungeon key. They pause, determined to clear this dungeon and escape its tedious, magical grip. Kuroto keeps his eyes peeled, scanning the dreary school grounds for any sign of progress. They trudge through the rain, their close proximity making every step feel increasingly awkward. Yukihime squats down to inspect a cluster of stones, hoping to find a hidden clue. They peer through a window, eyes widening at the strange sight resting on the sill. The repetitive nature of the search is clearly starting to grate on their nerves. Kuroto sighs in frustration as the mission drags on with no end in sight. Yukihime suddenly spots something, directing Kuroto's attention toward the mysterious object. Yukihime points toward the window, her hand trembling as she senses a trap. Kuroto snaps the umbrella open, but he inadvertently catches Yukihime off guard with the sudden movement. The canopy brushes against her, sending a wave of embarrassment through the already tense pair. Yukihime apologizes for the mishap, though her racing heart makes it difficult to maintain composure. Kuroto struggles to suppress his own mounting anxiety as they stand pressed together under the shade. Her voice lingers in his mind, turning a simple moment into an unwanted distraction for Kuroto. Kuroto snaps back to reality, desperately trying to convince himself that he has no romantic interest. The accidental contact leaves Yukihime reeling, struggling to process the sudden surge of physical closeness. They attempt to steady their breathing, refocusing their limited attention on the hunt for the key. Kuroto dismisses his earlier suspicion about the window, hoping to move on from the awkward encounter. Suddenly, Yukihime freezes as she notices a peculiar detail on the window that demands their attention. Kuroto snaps the umbrella open, but he inadvertently catches Yukihime off guard with the movement. A sudden burst of magical wind whips through the hallway, throwing the pair into chaos. Kuroto checks on his companion, his voice laced with genuine concern amidst the sudden storm. He scolds Yukihime for her recklessness, reminding her of the dangers they faced earlier today. A tiny, sharp projectile whistles past them, signaling that their shelter is no longer safe. They stand pressed together under the umbrella, the close proximity making their hearts race wildly. Yukihime clutches her chest, overwhelmed by the sudden physical intimacy of the shared space. Kuroto pulls away and releases her, trying to ignore the lingering tension between them both. Yukihime watches him sway, her face flushed with heat as she struggles to find words. Suddenly, Kuroto erupts in a blazing aura of power, leaving Yukihime stunned by his strength. A frustrated growl echoes through the air as the pressure builds between them. Kuroto lunges forward, desperate to escape the mounting tension of their shared moment. Nearby students linger near the dungeon entrance, whispering about the stalled progress. Two lazy hunters complain about the lack of easy money and their failed attempts. Yukihime watches them from a distance, silently judging their lack of ambition and drive. She sips her drink, calculating the benefits of securing a license for financial stability. Suddenly, she freezes as the hunters mock the top-ranked students for their slow progress. Yukihime snaps back, fiercely defending Mononobe's hard work against their lazy insults. The ground trembles as she mentally berates them for their hypocrisy and uselessness. A sudden step stops the confrontation in its tracks, changing everything in an instant. The disciplinary committee chairman steps into the scene, his cold gaze silencing the air. He confronts the two lazy hunters, refusing to let their dismissive attitude slide any further. The chairman sternly lectures them on the importance of duty, regardless of their current rank. He grabs a hunter by the collar, demanding they explain their insults toward his students. With a terrifying grin, he offers to take them to the monster-infested 10th floor. Terrified by the threat, the two hunters turn and scramble away in a panic. The chairman remains composed, his sharp eyes tracking their retreat with quiet, icy disapproval. Suddenly, an unexpected finger pokes his cheek, shattering his intense and serious demeanor. He cries out in surprise as the sudden contact catches him completely off guard. Yukihime watches the chairman crumble with a playful grin, finding his dramatic reaction hilarious. Yukihime continues to praise the chairman for his bold defense of the students. She looks up at him with a gentle smile, clearly impressed by his actions. The chairman remains flustered, denying he needs any recognition for doing his job. He admits he was only acting out of frustration toward those lazy, weak hunters. The chairman confesses that he sees himself in their lack of effort. He recalls how she once hindered his path to the dangerous 10th floor. He grips his fist, feeling a strange sense of relief despite the lost opportunity. He acknowledges he is weaker than the top students but refuses to quit. He declares his intent to conquer the 10th floor today, warning her to stay back. Yukiheim simply agrees with a soft smile, watching as she reaches out to him. Yukiheim pulls the chairman into her space, teasingly telling him there is no other choice. She insists that if they work together, the 10th floor will be a simple task. The chairman tries to deflect her affection, feeling flustered by her sudden proximity. Yukiheim pulls him tighter, warning that he will fail the dungeon if this closeness bothers him. The chairman flinches away, demanding that she stop pestering him and just back off. Yukiheim realizes this is her perfect chance to force him to acknowledge her presence. She sighs, telling him that he has always been far too serious for his own good. The chairman huffs, firmly declaring that there is absolutely nothing wrong with maintaining his discipline. Flashbacks show a young boy rushing to save a crying child as others flee in terror. The young boy checks on the girl, asking if she is alright after his timely arrival. Kurara beams with pure joy, declaring that Sei-chan is her ultimate hero. Sei-chan freezes, his face burning bright red as the praise hits him hard. He mutters that he is a hero, though his stomach rumbles with sudden nervousness. Kurara asks if he said something, but he quickly denies everything with a shout. The surrounding crowd murmurs in confusion as the pair continues their awkward bickering. Kuroto collapses, overwhelmed by the intense pressure, as she rushes to his side. She cries out that he is taking things way too far as he finally crumbles. He pants heavily, gasping that at least they managed to secure the dungeon key. His vision fades to white as he collapses, leaving her in a panicked frenzy. Observing the chaos, she wonders if he really intends to continue despite the crisis. Kuroto chooses to flee the scene entirely, deciding that some battles are better left unfought today. Yukiheim stands outside, gathering her courage as she finally reaches her destination. She gazes up at the quiet house, contemplating her visit to the ailing Kuroto. The memory of his collapse lingers, a reminder of the dangerous dungeon poison. She clutches the address tightly, questioning her decision to use school documents as leverage. Doubt creeps into her mind, and she worries she is just an unwanted interference. Startled, she finds Kuroto standing right behind her, demanding to know why she is here. She mumbles to herself, wondering if her sudden arrival was truly a mistake. Deciding that she is only a bother, she turns to leave without further explanation. She sighs, disappointed that her chance to check on him has slipped away. But a mysterious maid suddenly appears at the door, questioning the intruder's identity. Yukiheim introduces herself to the mysterious girl, hoping for a warm welcome at the house. The maid greets her with a polite smile, asking if she is a friend of Kuroto. Yukiheim stares, wondering if this young-looking girl is truly the grandmother she heard about before. The maid teases Yukiheim, playfully asking if there is something strange written all over her face. Yukiheim panics and bows, while the maid watches her struggle with a smug, knowing grin. Kuroto storms into the room, shouting at his grandmother to stop whatever she is doing. The grandmother remains unfazed, casually admitting that she has already been found out by them. They sit together at the table, where she introduces herself as the elder Sinokami Hain. Kuroto desperately warns Yukiheim not to be fooled by the woman's youthful and deceptive appearance. Hain puffs out her chest, proudly declaring that she is a master of recovery magic. Hain jokes that she is a yokai, prompting an immediate and painful smack to Kuroto's head. Kuroto snaps back in frustration while Yukiheim watches the bickering pair with wide, confused eyes. Hain leans in close to inspect the nervous girl, clearly enjoying the awkward situation. Hain grabs Yukiheim's hand and feigns surprise, acting as if she has just discovered a secret. With a charming smile, Hain tells Yukiheim to be kind to the misunderstood Kuroto. Kuroto jumps up in a frantic panic, loudly denying that Yukiheim is his girlfriend. Hain casually excuses herself to fetch tea, leaving the two teenagers alone to deal with the fallout. Kuroto sighs in disbelief, complaining about his grandmother's bizarre and unpredictable behavior. Kuroto turns his attention to Yukiheim, demanding to know the true reason for her sudden visit. Yukiheim struggles to find her words, silently panicking as she tries to justify being there. Yukiheim blushes, shyly admitting she came all this way just to see Kuroto. Kuroto is visibly flustered, burying his face in his hands to hide his embarrassment. Yukiheim gasps, realizing how her words might have been misinterpreted as a romantic confession. Kuroto tries to backtrack, awkwardly explaining her visit was only because he looked pale. Kuroto notes his grandmother's impressive ability to instantly purify the poison from his wound. Yukiheim glances around the room, still feeling the weight of the awkward atmosphere. Yukiheim asks if Kuroto studies recovery magic, hoping to steer the conversation elsewhere. Kuroto admits he lacks the talent for it, despite his efforts to learn. His grandmother presses him on whether his pursuit was truly for his sister's sake. Kuroto confirms the accident changed everything, forcing him to research every possible solution. Kuroto examines a rare encyclopedia detailing precious items recovered from deep within dangerous dungeons. He flips the pages, wondering aloud if this book serves as a literal treasure guide. Yukihime focuses on a legendary medicine capable of curing any injury or sickness instantly. A detailed illustration of an elixir captures their attention, hinting at immense hidden power. Kuroto explains these items are incredibly rare and far beyond the reach of normal people. Yukihime reacts with surprise, questioning if such legendary artifacts truly emerge from their local dungeon. He confirms the rarity, noting the Academy archives keep replicas of items found in there. Yukihime marvels at the dungeon's potential, finally grasping the true scale of its hidden value. Yukihime probes further, wondering if the prospect of wealth is what drew Kuroto to school. Kuroto dismisses the inquiry, but Yukihime refuses to let him give up on his quest. Yukihime slams her hand on the table, declaring they will hunt down the legendary elixir together. Kuroto warns her that such items are nearly impossible to find and worth a fortune. Unfazed, Yukihime argues that as long as there is a chance, it is worth the effort. Kuroto agrees to the plan, suggesting they loot everything else valuable while they hunt it. He catches a glimpse of her relentless determination, and his expression softens. Kuroto lets out a sudden, involuntary laugh at the sheer absurdity of the situation. Yukihime stares in disbelief as Kuroto breaks into a fit of uncharacteristic laughter. Kuroto teases her for being a secret gold digger, despite her calm and collected facade. He offers her a genuine smile, finally letting his guard down in her presence. Yukihime hesitates, looking away as the weight of her true feelings begins to surface. Kuroto leans back, his mind already drifting back to the lethal depths of the dungeon. Yukihime meets his gaze, her expression unreadable as she processes his lingering obsession. The pair sits in the quiet room, the heavy weight of their shared goal hanging between them. Outside, the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the quiet town streets. Kuroto and Yukihime stand at the street corner, preparing to go their separate ways. They exchange polite farewells, their professional distance keeping the true tension at bay. Yukihime turns to leave, but Kuroto stops her with a sudden, sharp call. Yukihime stops and turns back, wondering what could possibly be left to discuss. Kuroto stares ahead, his voice hardening as he drops the facade of casual conversation. Yukihime smiles, her eyes revealing a dangerous resolve that matches his own. Kuroto casts a knowing glance at Yukihime, his expression softening into a genuine, playful smile. Yukihime confidently accepts his challenge, promising to handle the next dungeon run with ease. The pair stands on the street corner, their professional distance masking a growing, unspoken tension. Yukihime stares into the distance, finally acknowledging the undeniable truth of her feelings for him. Kuroto closes his eyes, coming to terms with the deep affection he holds for her. They stand on the precipice of realization, the weight of these new emotions hanging between them. As they walk away, both resolve to keep their love secret, but can they survive the dungeon? Kuroto and Yukihime arrive at the dungeon entrance, ready to descend into the depths together. Kuroto signals his intent, declaring they must push as far as possible today. Yukihime agrees without hesitation, fully committed to his aggressive new strategy. Observers note the duo's intense motivation as they prepare to breach the bottom floor. They realize that if this pair gets serious, their combined power is truly formidable. Yet, a lingering doubt remains, as both seem strangely different than they were before. The pair reaches the 10th floor, where a sudden, thick fog envelopes their path. A monstrous statue blocks the way, demanding they hold hands to proceed further. Kuroto scoffs at the redundant, lazy gimmick guarding the corridor ahead. Yukihime smiles, unfazed by the trap they have already conquered once before. Kuroto suppresses a knowing smirk, his mind racing with newfound clarity about his partner. Yukihime catches him off guard, openly declaring her sudden, blossoming affection for him. Kuroto reels, imagining a world where their feelings might finally be mutual. He quickly dismisses the thought, convinced he is the only one harboring such deep feelings. The dungeon statue looms ahead, warning that any romantic display will result in an immediate ban. Kuroto crosses his arms, determined to maintain professional distance at all costs. He steals a fleeting glance at her, struggling to keep his composure intact. Yukihime stands before him, radiating a charm that makes his heart race uncontrollably. Kuroto agonizes over whether a girl of her stature could ever truly love him. He denies any romantic intent, fearing that his lingering doubt will only pull her down. Yukihime gently approaches the frantic Kuroto, sensing his deep, lingering internal struggle. Panic floods Yukihime as she wonders if Kuroto has discovered her true, hidden feelings. Yukihime hides her face, paralyzed by the intense embarrassment of their current proximity. Kuroto gasps in complete disbelief, utterly overwhelmed by the sudden shift in their dynamic. Kuroto demands an immediate end to their awkward interaction to regain his shattered composure. Yukihime snaps back, her frustration boiling over as she accepts his cold, professional demand. Yukihime forces herself to admit her love for Kuroto, despite the impossible circumstances ahead. She reminds herself that Kuroto fights for his sister, demanding her total, undivided focus. Yukihime views the vast, dangerous floor ahead, acknowledging her duty to protect everyone involved. Yukihime hardens her resolve, vowing to bury her love and hate deep within her heart. Yukihime pauses, recalling the fine print from their last encounter in the dungeon. They remember the cruel rule: they must hold hands to escape the room. A new reward is dangled before them, promising an SSS-rank treasure for completion. Yukihime stares at the sign, confused by the strange promise of a rare reward. Kuroto grows wary, realizing the dungeon is actively probing their deepest, hidden thoughts. He knows that chests like these are rarely just gifts from the dungeon floor. The dungeon creates these rewards as bait to lure unsuspecting humans into its trap. It tailors the prize to perfectly match the secret desires of those trapped inside. Yukihime wonders if this specific treasure is actually what Kuroto has been seeking. Her eyes widen as the prize reveals itself to be a legendary, life-saving elixir. Yukihime suspects the dungeon is reading their minds, calling the tactic devious and manipulative. Kuroto scoffs at the dungeon's intrusion, clearly irritated by the mental surveillance. Yukihime pauses, realizing the gravity of the situation as her expression shifts to shock. Kuroto decides to stop overthinking and boldly claims the reward for their own gain. Yukihime agrees with his plan, eager to clear the floor and move forward immediately. They extend their hands toward one another, preparing to fulfill the dungeon's mandatory requirement. Both stand ready, the tension of the impending physical contact hanging heavily between them. Their fingertips finally make contact, triggering the mechanism required to proceed further. Kuroto suddenly snaps his hand away in a frantic, panicked reaction to the touch. Yukihime stands frozen with her hand still extended, completely bewildered by his abrupt rejection. Yukihime questions Kuroto's sudden hesitation, demanding to know why he refuses to hold her hand again. Kuroto struggles to explain his embarrassment, insisting he is not against the act itself. He worries that physical contact now would trigger an outcome he is not ready to face. Frustrated, Yukihime suggests he should just find someone else like Konguen-san to complete the mission. Kuroto is stunned by her suggestion, questioning why she would bring up another person so abruptly. Yukihime remains annoyed, noting that the dungeon does not strictly require her as his partner. She sighs, begrudgingly admitting that Konguen-san would likely be an effective enough substitute. Kuroto stares down, his mind racing as he searches for the right words to respond. He looks up, his face burning with a deep blush as he makes a bold admission. Kuroto declares he wants no one but her, leaving Yukihime stunned into complete, breathless silence. Yukihime stands tall and smug, demanding that Kuroto acknowledge her as his ideal partner. She insists it is only natural that a model student like her leads the way. Kuroto is visibly appalled by her overwhelming confidence, barely managing to keep his cool. Relieved he avoided a slip of the tongue, Kuroto internally mocks Yukihime for her airheadness. Yukihime is left completely bewildered, wondering what just happened in their strange interaction. Sweat beads on Kuroto's brow as he panics over the potential of a romantic confession. Kuroto tries to backtrack, offering to start the physical connection over from the beginning. Yukihime abruptly slams the ground with a massive shockwave, stopping Kuroto in his tracks. Kuroto watches in disbelief as the floor crumbles, stunned by her sudden display of force. Yukihime berates him for his lack of restraint, calling him a berserker instead of a partner. The pair erupts into a heated argument, their faces contorted in pure, unadulterated shock. Kuroto stands alone in the corridor, brooding over the sudden turn of events. Clad in heavy samurai armor, he announces his readiness to tackle the 10th floor. Kirara watches him with disbelief, questioning his bizarre choice of dungeon attire. He bolts forward with a determined sprint, leaving his confused companion trailing behind him. A massive tremor shakes the foundations of the dungeon as the floor begins collapsing. Kuroto and his partner lock eyes, their intense glare signaling a brewing confrontation. They turn away from each other in a huff, both clearly fed up with the bickering. Makoto watches them storm off, terrified by the volatile energy radiating from the duo. He wonders if an invisible enemy is tearing them apart, oblivious to the true threat. Kuroto tries to mask his anxiety with bravado, but his partner suggests they call it quits.